All right. Good morning to all of you watching us live, 7:30 a.m. Pacific, bright and early. Excuse me. I've got a scratchy voice. We're down in the Bay Area today in the Russian River Valley. A lot of flowers are blooming. It's springtime. Got my orange juice here to try and keep my throat clear. So we'll see how that goes. But you know what? We're not going to wait for the news because the news is not going to wait for us. So, and good afternoon and good evening to everybody watching on YouTube as well. This is our daily edition of My Empowered Political Life. And of course, check the links below. Please like and subscribe. If you believe in what we're doing, that's the easiest, simplest way for you to help us get out the message. So today we're talking about the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, which you may have heard of. A little bit of background. This is um, October 7th, 2023. You may remember that terrorists from Hamas uh, came out of Gaza and carried out an attack in Israel. They killed more than 1,200 civilians and they took over 250 hostages. Shortly thereafter, Israel responded the way you would normally expect them to something like this. They invaded Gaza with the stated intention of destroying the capacity of Hamas to make war on them again. Some have called the Israeli invasion of Gaza justified, and others have criticized the invasion as being especially brutal. Personally, I do not see those as mutually exclusive. It could be that they were justified in going in to take out Hamas, and it could also be that they have been especially brutal, much more brutal than they needed to be. We had a lot of student protests break out across the United States, a lot of universities. They protested the Israeli military's actions and brutality in Gaza. And some of these protests were entirely peaceful and lawful. Others did involve property damage, trespassing, and harassing of Jewish students. So there was a wide range, and I'm not trying to paint everybody with a broad brush. It's my view that the vast majority of protesters on American campuses were peaceful and lawful, and then a handful were not. Mahmoud Khalil, who you may have read about this week, has been in the news last couple of days. He's a 30-year-old immigrant from Syria who attended Columbia University. Mr. Khalil is a lawful permanent resident. This is a key point here in what we're talking about. Mr. Khalil is a lawful permanent resident. In other words, he holds what we call a green card in the United States, which is basically one step short of citizenship. So he is a lawful permanent resident. He is married to a U.S. citizen, uh, and not that it's relevant, but it turns out she's pregnant with their child. And Mr. Khalil was one of the key leaders in the protests at Columbia University. So, Columbia University made a determination that the protests had a serious and invasive atmosphere of anti Semitism. However, Mr. Khalil himself has publicly disavowed the worst of the anti Semitic rhetoric. He's issued a number of public statements disavowing a lot of the anti Semitic rhetoric. So, what's happening? Mahmoud Khalil was arrested at his apartment building by several plainclothes officers who refused to identify themselves. And I think it's worth watching. I think the sound is going to work on the video, but hopefully it does. We'll see. I think it's worth watching his wife's videotaping from her camera of the arrest. It'll take a couple minutes. Amy is their lawyer, for what it's worth. Sorry. So a number of things come out of that video. Again, I'm not totally sure if the sound worked, if I embedded it correctly, but fortunately it had subtitles. So they four plainclothes officers. It looked like one of them might have had a badge on. It was hard to see. Showed up, refused to identify themselves, said he was being arrested. They wouldn't say what the charge is. They wouldn't give their names. They wouldn't say where they were from. That is not normal. When you are being arrested, you are supposed to have certain rights. Again, Mr. Khalil is a lawful permanent resident. And you'll notice that he remained incredibly calm. And I'm not sure if you could hear his wife's voice. She was obviously terrified and trying to talk to the lawyer on the phone while this was happening. And so the government initially stated that Mr. Khalil's student visa was being revoked. Again, he's not in the United States on a student visa. He's a lawful permanent resident with a green card, which, as we said a minute ago, is one step short of citizenship. So the government's initial reason was not true, not factually true. And then the Department of Homeland Security admitted in a written statement in court the allegation here is not that he was breaking the law. So they said they were revoking a student visa, which was factually not true. And then they admitted in a written statement that they are not alleging he has broken any laws. Instead, the allegation is that Mr. Khalil made unpopular statements that the administration finds to be aligned with Hamas. And you may or may not agree with things he said and done in the past. No specific crimes or terrorist aligned activities have been alleged in court. Mr. Khalil is now being held at an ICE detention facility in Louisiana pending deportation. He was sent to Louisiana even after a judge said, don't remove him from our jurisdiction. ICE did it anyway. And then on Tuesday, the Department of Justice added new allegations to the court filing, saying that Mr. Khalil is being deported not because of his unpopular speech, but because he failed to disclose his entire employment history on his initial visa application. And Khalil's lawyers are arguing the government is simply trying to add a post hoc rationale after they realized they could not deport a lawful permanent resident for engaging in protected speech. And it is perhaps somewhat telling that the Department of Justice had to add these new allegations after the outcry and after the judge seemed very skeptical of their position. So, looking around doors, looking around corners, where is this going? Under our constitutional system, everyone has a right to free speech. Again, Mr. Khalil is not an illegal immigrant. He's a lawful permanent resident. He's married to a United States citizen. And whether you or I agree with the things Khalil has said is completely beside the point. Maybe you think he said pro Hamas things, maybe you don't. Maybe you think he's anti Semitic, maybe you don't. Whether you or I agree is beside the point. And Customs and Border Patrol is now, in fact, even checking phones when people enter the country, looking for criticism of the president and using that as an excuse to deny what would otherwise be lawful entry into the United States. So this is a trend of going after people's speech rights. There are several countries that have warned their citizens not to travel to the United States anymore because they could be persecuted for speaking out. We have Germany, the United Kingdom, Denmark, and Finland. That's the latest count that I was able to verify of countries that have warned their citizens not to travel here anymore because they're not sure what's going to happen. And the way I see it when it comes to free speech is either all of us have a right to free speech or none of us do. I don't think there's really a lot of in between. Now, of course, there are exceptions. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You cannot incite violence. But the basic free speech protections should extend to everyone who's here. Because if it's only extended to some people, then there isn't really a right to free speech. There's just us waiting for the government to not like the things we have to say. And I know I'm small fish on here, but even speaking out like this, for all I know, could put me at risk. I know people, I have friends who are much more prominent and vocal and have bigger audiences than me who are speaking out and really taking a risk. Again, thank you for being here. We appreciate all of you. Please like and subscribe. Check out the links below to make sure you get on our list.